As the sun sinks behind the stone walls of a 14th-century monastery, the world grows still. The air carries the fragrance of herbs from the cloister garden, mingling with the faint smoke of tallow candles. Bells toll softly in the distance, marking the hour of prayer. Inside these walls, monks move with quiet purpose, their lives shaped by rhythm, silence, and devotion. Tonight, we step into their world to witness the gentle peace of evening in a medieval monastery. The day begins to fade, not with hurried steps or noise, but with a gradual slowing, as if the monastery itself is breathing deeply, ready to settle into its evening rhythm. High stone walls absorb the last rays of light, turning golden, then dusky grey as shadows lengthen across the courtyard. The bells, suspended in the squat tower above the chapel, are rung by a single monk, pulling on the thick rope with measured strength. Their deep toll carries across the monastery and beyond, spilling into the fields and woodlands that border the grounds. Inside, every monk knows the sound well. It is not merely a call but a reminder. Time is no longer their own, but given wholly to prayer, reflection, and work. The bell marks the transition from day to evening, from labor to contemplation, from noise to silence. Its echoes fade slowly into the quiet of the approaching night. The courtyard, once busy with the movement of monks tending gardens, copying texts, or mending tools, now stills. The scent of herbs lingers in the cool air. Rosemary and thyme, gathered earlier for both medicine and the kitchen. Dust rises faintly from stone walkways as sandals scuff their way toward the chapel, where candlelight already flickers behind leaded glass windows. The monastery is not grand, nor meant to be. Its architecture is plain but steady. Thick stone walls, narrow arched windows, simple wooden doors. The beauty lies not in extravagance, but in the way light plays across the stones, in the hush that fills the corridors, in the rhythm of the hours marked faithfully by bells. Each space has a purpose: the dormitory for rest, the cloister for meditation, the refectory for meals, and above all, the chapel for prayer. A scribe, having spent the afternoon hunched over parchment in the scriptorium, carefully blots the final stroke of ink. His back aches, but there is satisfaction in knowing that a single psalm has been faithfully preserved, perhaps to last centuries. He sets down his quill, closes the wooden cover of the manuscript, and stretches his stiff hands. Like the others, he will now follow the bell's summons to prayer. The novices, younger and less steady in their vows, hurry slightly, though they try to mask their eagerness under the calm, practiced pace of their elders. One carries a candle too high, dripping wax onto his sleeve, but another gently corrects him, lowering it to shield the flame from the breeze. These small moments, guidance, correction, patience, form the quiet fabric of life within these walls. The chapel itself is a space of shadow and light. Rows of wooden benches face the altar, where a crucifix hangs above, lit by the steady glow of candles. The air is thick with the faint aroma of beeswax and incense, lingering from earlier prayers. The floor, worn smooth by countless steps, reflects the glow in small patches where stone has been polished by centuries of sandals. As the monks file in, each bows his head before entering the nave. Their movements are deliberate, almost like a dance rehearsed over years of devotion. The abbot, distinguished not by finery, but by the quiet weight of his years, takes his place at the front. Silence falls fully now, a silence so deep that one can hear the shuffling of robes, the rustle of pages as psalters are opened, and the faint creak of wood as the monks settle into their places. Then, almost without cue, the chanting begins. A single voice rises, low and steady, carrying the words of an evening prayer. Soon others join, blending into harmony. The sound fills the stone chamber, reverberating off the walls, rising like smoke through unseen cracks and arches. It is not performance but devotion, a sound meant not for listeners, but for God. Still, to any who hear it, it is beautiful, a reminder of the depth of quiet living. The chant carries on, rising and falling in waves. Outside, the first stars appear, faint against the deepening blue of the sky. The monastery, enclosed and withdrawn from the wider world, feels at this hour like a place suspended between heaven and earth. For the monks, this is only the beginning of their evening. Hours will still be spent in prayer, reflection, and simple tasks before they finally retire to rest. But this first act, the tolling bell, the walk to chapel, the joining in chant, sets the tone for all that follows. Evening has begun, and with it, a slow and sacred rhythm unfolds. When the last note of chant fades into silence, the monks remain still for a long moment, heads bowed, letting the echo sink into the stone walls. Then, without hurry, they rise, their sandals brushing against the floor in a soft shuffle that carries them out of the chapel and into the cloister. Evening has deepened into night, and the air is cool and calm. Torches set into iron brackets flicker against the walls, lighting their way toward the refectory, the long dining hall where they will share their simple evening meal. The refectory is one of the monastery's largest rooms, long and narrow, with vaulted ceilings of heavy timber beams. Wooden tables stretch from end to end, plain and unadorned, worn smooth by decades of use. A crucifix hangs at the far wall, reminding all that even in eating, their purpose is prayer. Light from oil lamps and candles softens the space, casting shadows across the benches, the walls, and the monks who file in, each with aisle in, each with our deliberate calm. No one speaks. Silence is kept here too, but it is a silence filled with meaning. For conversation is unnecessary when each man shares in the same rhythm, the same humble meal, the same devotion. Instead of chatter, the meal begins with the voice of the reader. A monk steps up to the lectern at the center of the hall, opens a worn book, and begins to read aloud in a steady, measured tone. It may be scripture, it may be the lives of the saints, or a treatise on virtue, words meant to nourish the spirit as food nourishes the body. Meanwhile, the servers move quietly among the benches. They are not separate from the others, for tonight they serve, and tomorrow they too will sit. Their task is one of humility, done without fanfare. Wooden bowls are set before each monk, filled with a simple stew, beans and vegetables grown in the monastery garden, perhaps flavored with herbs gathered earlier that day. A coarse loaf of bread is placed on the table to be shared among all. Sometimes there is cheese, rarely meat, for the diet is one of restraint. Yet the food, though plain, is wholesome, born of their own labor, free of excess. The monks eat slowly, mindful of each bite. Silence allows them to listen fully to the reading, but it also allows them to remember that this meal too is prayer. Gratitude rests in each spoonful, not taken for granted, but accepted as a gift. candles flicker as the reader's voice continues, sometimes echoing faintly in the rafters above. The words are steady, almost like chanting, rising and falling in rhythm with the turning of pages. It is not entertainment but a lesson, one that seeps quietly into the heart while the body is nourished. For the novices, the silence is sometimes a challenge. Their minds wander, their stomachs hunger, their eyes drift toward the bread before them. Yet in time, they learn. Silence is not emptiness, but fullness. A space where thoughts deepen, where gratitude sharpens, where patience grows. This is part of their training, part of what it means to belong here. The abbot, seated at the head of the table, eats no differently from the others. His bowl is no fuller, his bread no larger. He listens as intently as anyone, his presence reminding all that leadership here is not about privilege, but about service and example. The meal is not long, perhaps half an hour, yet it stretches in a way that feels timeless. Outside, the stars shine brighter and the night deepens. Inside, the hall is warm with the glow of fire and candlelight, the simple clatter of spoons against bowls, the sound of pages turning as the reader continues his work. At last, the meal ends with prayer. The reader closes his book, the monks bow their heads. A brief blessing is given, thanking God for food, for community, and for the strength to continue their vocation. Then, as quietly as they entered, they rise and leave their places. The servers collect bowls and wipe down tables, their task not finished until the room is restored to stillness. The refectory empties, the lamps are dimmed, and the hall falls back into shadow. Another part of the evening has passed, not dramatic, not grand, but deeply steady. For here, in this meal, one sees the heart of monastic life: simplicity, humility, gratitude, and the quiet beauty of shared silence. As the monks return to the cloister, some move toward the scriptorium to continue copying texts by candlelight, others to small tasks, and still others to meditation before the night watch begins. The rhythm continues, unbroken, as evening slowly turns toward night. After the evening meal, the monastery does not grow quiet all at once. Instead, life shifts from one rhythm to another, from the shared silence of the refectory to the hushed labors of the scriptorium. This room, unlike the vast hall of the refectory, is smaller and more intimate. It is the beating heart of the monastery's intellectual work, where knowledge is preserved one page at a time. The scriptorium is lit with an array of candles and oil lamps, carefully positioned to give the copyists just enough light without wasting precious wax or oil. Their glow casts a golden halo over long wooden desks, where parchment sheets are spread out flat, weighed down by smooth stones or wooden rods to keep them from curling. Quills rest in shallow bowls of ink, the black liquid glistening faintly in the candlelight. Here, the monks sit in near silence, their bodies bent forward, hands steady, eyes focused with almost unearthly patience. Each is responsible for copying or illuminating a manuscript, sometimes working on scripture, sometimes on the writings of saints, sometimes even on old works of science, medicine, or philosophy. To copy a book is not just labor, but devotion, each letter carefully inscribed, each line a prayer in itself. The work is exacting. A single slip of the quill might ruin a page, and parchment is precious. So each monk moves with deliberate slowness, dipping quill into ink, then pressing it to the page in careful strokes. The sound is almost imperceptible. The faint scratch of feather against parchment, the whisper of pages turning, the whisper of pages turning, the gentle breath of men who work as if the night has no end. Some among them are illuminators, their task more art than copying. They grind pigments from minerals and plants, mixing them with egg yolk or honey to create vivid colors. Gold leaf lies in tiny sheets beside them, ready to be pressed into the decorated initials or sacred scenes that bring the manuscripts to life. The colors shine brightly in the candlelight, blue as deep as the night sky, red as rich as wine, and gold that gleams like sunlight caught on the page. For the novice allowed into the scriptorium, the experience is overwhelming. The silence hums with focus, and the work requires patience unlike any other. Some find their minds wandering. Others struggle with the cramp of fingers that must hold the quill just so. But for those who endure, the task shapes not only their handwriting, but their spirit. They learn diligence, humility, and the sacred weight of preserving words for generations to come. The abbot sometimes enters, walking slowly among the desks, his sandals quiet against the floor. He glances at the pages, nods in approval, or gently corrects a mistake. But even his presence does not disrupt the atmosphere. The scriptorium is a sanctuary within the monastery, a place where time itself feels slowed, as if eternity leans in to listen to the scratching of quills. Outside, the night grows darker. The stars, unseen from within, glimmer across the vast sky. But inside, the monks labor on, their little flames warding off the vastness of the night. The flicker of candles, the stillness of the air, the devotion in every movement, all of it becomes a single act of worship. As the hours pass, fatigue creeps in. A hand trembles, an eye blinks longer than it should, a yawn is stifled. One monk lays down his quill, folds his hands, and bows his head in silent prayer before leaving for rest. Another continues, determined to finish the page before him. There is no command to stop. Each man knows his strength and withdraws when his body tells him to. By midnight, fewer remain. A handful still write, their faces lined with concentration, shadows playing across their robes and the walls. The scriptorium grows quieter still, though the sound of quills never fully ceases. The books they copy may never bear their names, but their work ensures that knowledge survives wars, storms, and time itself. Each word carefully traced is a gift carried forward into an unknown future. Finally, as the last candle burns low, the remaining monks gather their materials. Quills are cleaned, ink covered, pigments stored. The parchment is set aside with reverence, as if the page itself were sacred. The room falls silent at last, the flames snuffed one by one until darkness claims the space again. The work of the scriptorium is finished for the night, but tomorrow it will begin again, as steady as prayer, as enduring as stone. The monks file back into the cloister, the cool air brushing their faces after the warmth of the room. They move softly through the corridors, some toward their cells for rest, others toward prayer, as the monastery shifts deeper into the stillness of night. As the work in the scriptorium comes to a close, another rhythm of monastic life unfolds. The monks step into the cloister, that sheltered walkway which circles the heart of the monastery. The cloister is more than a corridor. It is a place of meditation, a stone path enclosing a small courtyard garden open to the sky. By day, sunlight pours into its arches. By night, it becomes a quiet corridor of shadows and silence, where the soul seems closer to God than to the world. The stone beneath the monk's sandals is cool, worn smooth by countless feet over generations. The arches rise in graceful curves, framing the night sky in perfect symmetry. The courtyard in the center is dark now, save for the faint outline of hedges and the pale shapes of herbs and flowers in the moonlight. The air smells faintly of lavender and thyme, planted long ago both for healing and for prayer. The cloister is not only a physical path, but a spiritual one. Walking its square circuit is an ancient practice, a way to order thoughts, to let prayers settle in the heart. Tonight, the monks move along its sides with a reverent pace. Some walk alone, hands folded in sleeves, gazing downward in quiet contemplation. Others walk in pairs, their whispers hushed, speaking softly of scripture or of tasks to be done on the morrow. Above them, the night sky stretches vast and unbroken, stars flickering in their constellations. The moon casts its silver glow across the courtyard, and the play of light and shadow along the stone arches creates a rhythm almost as steady as the chants sung earlier in the chapel. Here, the silence of the monastery is alive, not empty, but full of breath, thought, prayer, and the lingering sense of eternity. A novice, still new to the discipline of the cloister walk, feels the urge to speak too loudly, but the elder beside him raises a hand gently. Words are not forbidden, but silence is better, for in silence the soul listens. The novice bows his head, learning not only from books or drills, but from the very stones and stillness of the place. In one corner of the cloister, a bench carved from oak provides rest. An old monk sits there, his hands folded, his face tilted toward the sky. His lips move in prayer, though no sound emerges. He has walked these cloisters for decades, his life measured not in seasons or years, but in the number of times he has circled this garden, each step a petition, each breath a hymn. The cloister also holds memory. In some monasteries, gravestones are set into the central garden, a reminder to the living of those who came before. Tonight, the headstones gleam faintly in the moonlight, their inscriptions softened by time. The monks pass them as they walk, never pausing, for remembrance of mortality is part of their rhythm. Life is fleeting, but eternity waits just beyond the veil of stars. Occasionally, a gust of wind moves through the cloister, carrying with it the faint creak of the wooden beams above, or the rustle of leaves in the courtyard. A candle, placed in a niche by the entrance, flickers and nearly dies before steadying again. The sounds are small, but magnified by the stillness, reminding the monks that even in silence, the world speaks. Some carry small books with them, holding them open as they walk. These are not for study in the ordinary sense, but for prayer, psalters, breviaries, or small collections of meditations. The words are read slowly, one line at a time, with long pauses in between. The monks savor the words as one might savor bread, nourishing the heart with measured care. The cloister walk is not hurried. Time itself feels suspended here. Outside the monastery walls, villages sleep, travelers move along roads, kings rule, wars rage, and markets bustle. But here, none of that intrudes. The cloister belongs to eternity, and those who walk its stone path are, for a time, lifted out of the ordinary flow of life. Eventually, the bell tolls softly in the distance, signaling the hour. The monks bow their heads, and some turn toward their cells, ready for the night's rest. Others linger, walking one more circuit, unwilling to part from the quiet. The cloister, like the scriptorium, is both discipline and gift, shaping the soul while offering peace. As the last of them departs, the courtyard lies still beneath the moon. The stone arches stand watch, timeless and patient. The monastery sleeps, but the cloister remains, waiting for tomorrow's steps, tomorrow's quiet voices. As dusk settles fully over the monastery, the call to supper echoes faintly through the halls. The monks make their way toward the refectory, the communal dining hall, where they share their evening meal. Though humble in appearance, the refectory holds a solemn dignity. Its long wooden tables stretch beneath high-beamed ceilings, lit tonight by the soft glow of candles set in iron sconces along the walls. The scent of bread, broth, and herbs fills the air, welcoming after a day of labor and prayer. Each monk enters in silence, pausing to bow before the crucifix that hangs prominently at the head of the hall. The benches creak quietly as they take their places, robes brushing against the wood. The sound of shuffling feet and rustling fabric soon fades, replaced by a deep hush. Silence is not merely observed here, it is embraced, transforming a simple meal into an act of devotion. A novice, carrying a tray of brown loaves, moves carefully along the tables. Placing one on each wooden trencher, another follows with a pot of lentil stew, the steam rising gently into the air. Though the fare is plain, it is nourishing. The monks eat what is given with gratitude, for every meal is seen as a gift from God. The simple clatter of wooden spoons and bowls is the only sound. Save for the voice of the appointed reader. From a raised lectern near the front, a monk opens a heavy book and begins to read aloud. His voice is steady and calm, filling the hall with passages from Scripture and the writings of saints. While the monks eat, their minds are fed by these words, so that body and soul are nourished together. No one speaks in reply, for conversation is set aside during meals. Listening itself becomes a form of worship. Candlelight flickers across the faces of the listeners, casting shadows along the stone walls. Some close their eyes briefly, savoring the words along with the taste of bread. Others keep their gaze fixed on the reader, absorbing each syllable as though it were sustenance itself. The rhythm of spoon and voice creates a quiet harmony, a cadence that has shaped monastic life for centuries. At times, the hall feels like an extension of the chapel. The arrangement is different, yet the spirit is the same: reverence, order, and devotion. Even laughter, which comes easily in other places, is subdued here. A smile may flicker across a face at a novice's small mishap, a dropped spoon, an overfilled bowl, but it fades quickly, folded back into the solemnity of the moment. The meal itself is brief, for moderation guides every aspect of monastic life. When the bowls are emptied and the loaves are reduced to crumbs, the monks fold their hands, bow their heads, and give thanks in unison. The reader closes his book, and silence deepens once again. A single voice intones the final prayer, and the hall empties as quietly as it was filled. After supper, a few remain behind, to wash the wooden bowls and clear the tables. Their work is done without complaint, for service is considered an honor, not a burden. The scrape of benches, the swish of water poured into basins, and the rhythmic wiping of cloth on wood form the gentle sounds of closure. Soon, even these fade, leaving the hall in stillness once more, its candles flickering softly against the vast silence. Outside, the air has grown colder, and a faint mist rises from the earth. The monks step out of the refectory into the courtyard, their sandals brushing softly against the flagstones. Some return to the cloister for another walk, others retire to their cells for private prayer. Yet all carry with them the quiet peace of the meal just shared. The refectory is not only a place of eating, it is a reminder of the bond that unites the brothers. They live together, pray together, labor together, and even in silence, they share their lives as one. Each supper affirms this unity, not with grand feasts or abundance, but with bread, stew, and the sacred act of listening. The hall itself will wait through the night, its tables cleared, its benches empty, until the next day when it will again host the rhythm of prayerful meals. Its stones, its beams, and even its shadows seem to hold the memory of countless suppers past, stretching back through decades of monks who once sat where these men now sit. For the monks, supper is not simply the end of the day's labors, but a preparation for the greater stillness of the night to come. Just as the day began in prayer, so it closes in prayer, even at the table. In the monastery, every act, even the breaking of bread, is sanctified by intention, silence, and gratitude. The air grows cooler as the evening deepens, and the monastery seems to sink into a deeper stillness. The courtyard lies beneath a velvet sky, where the first stars glimmer faintly, and the breeze carries with it the scent of damp earth and wood smoke. In the hush of twilight, the monks gather once more, their robes brushing quietly against the stone floors as they make their way to the chapel. It is time for Compline, the final prayer of the day. Inside, the chapel glows with subdued light. Candles flicker at the altar, casting soft shadows across the stone arches. The benches and stoles are well worn, smoothed by generations of worshippers who have come here nightly to entrust their souls to God before sleep. Tonight is no different. The monks file in silently, bowing before the crucifix, each settling into his place with a kind of solemn ease. The chanting begins low and steady, the voices weaving together like threads in a tapestry. The psalms of Compline are prayers of trust and surrender. Words that give thanks for the day just past and ask for protection through the night. The sound is both gentle and profound, filling the chapel like a tide that rises and recedes, only to rise again. In this hour, the burden of the day's work seems to lift, replaced by a calm that lingers in the heart. One monk steps forward to intone the antiphon, his voice ringing out clear against the vaulted stone. The others respond in measured harmony, their chant rising upward as if to meet the stars beyond the roof. The music is not embellished or elaborate, but simple, steady, and timeless. Each note feels like a lantern glowing faintly in the darkness, guiding weary spirits toward rest. The service continues with prayers and scripture. Passages remind the brothers that sleep itself is a gift, a pause given by God to renew the body and soul. Into your hands, Lord, I commend my spirit. They chant together, the ancient words rolling like a wave across the chapel. It is not only a prayer for the night, but a gentle rehearsal for the final rest that all must one day face. As the prayers conclude, silence returns. A single monk carrying a small lamp moves slowly through the rows, extinguishing candles until only the altar remains lit. The chapel grows dimmer with each step, shadows gathering in the corners and climbing the arches. By the time the last prayer is whispered, the room is nearly dark, illuminated only by the faint glow of the altar candles and the silver gleam of moonlight through narrow windows. The monks rise quietly and bow once more before the crucifix. Their departure is hushed, their sandals brushing softly against the flagstones as they slip back into the cloister halls. For them, the night is a time of both stillness and watchfulness. Sleep will come soon, but their hearts remain mindful, tethered to the rhythm of prayer even in dreams. Outside, the monastery rests, beneath the night sky. The world beyond may bustle with noise, but here all is quiet, enclosed in stone and silence. The walls seem to breathe with the prayers they have held for centuries, sheltering the monks as they retreat into their cells. Compline marks the final chapter of the day, and with it comes a profound peace, as if the whole monastery itself has bowed its head in prayer. The hour after Compline belongs to silence. Within the monastery, it is known as the Great Silence, a time when words fall away, and only the stillness of stone, air, and prayer remains. As the last chants fade, the cloister settles into its nightly rhythm. The vast halls are quiet, the echo of footsteps softened against the flagstones. Lamps glow faintly along the walls, their light stretching in thin, trembling lines across the floor. The cloister courtyard lies at the heart of the monastery. By day, it is filled with muted activity, monks walking between duties, young novices hurrying with baskets, the laundry hung on lines to dry in the sun. But at night, it transforms. The arches that ring the courtyard seem darker and more immense, framing the pale square of the sky overhead. Stars gleam in their patterns, and the moon's light spills across the grass in silver patches. A few monks linger briefly in the cloister walkways after Compline, heads bowed, as they trace the cool stone with slow, deliberate steps. For some, this is a moment to pray alone, their words soundless but steady. For others, it is a time to simply breathe in the quiet, to feel the hush that settles like a soft cloak around the monastery. Their shadows stretch long beneath the arches, merging with the darkness, then vanish as they slip into their cells. The air carries many subtle sounds, the coo of doves resting in the eaves, the distant rustle of leaves stirred by a passing breeze, occasionally the faint creak of a wooden door as a monk steps into or out of a passageway. These small noises, so ordinary, take on a heightened presence in the silence. The monastery feels like a living body at rest, its breath slow, its pulse steady. The cloister garden itself lies still, the herbs and flowers that grow there closing for the night. Lavender, rosemary, and thyme release their fragrance in the cool air, mingling with the damp scent of earth. The small fountain at the center burbles quietly, its water glinting in the moonlight. It is said that even the sound of flowing water can be a prayer, a continual offering lifted toward heaven. Along the covered walkways, manuscripts are sometimes left on stone benches by the brothers who study them late into the evening. Tonight, a small psalter lies closed upon a bench, its painted cover gleaming faintly in the candlelight from a nearby sconce. Tomorrow it will be retrieved, but for now it waits in the silence, as much a part of the cloister's stillness as the arches or the stars above. Within the hush, one can almost feel time stretching differently. The bustle of daily tasks, the clatter of bowls in the refectory, the scraping of quills in the refectory, the scraping of quills in the scriptorium, fades into memory. The night cloister belongs to eternity, a reminder that beyond labor and duty lies the deeper rhythm of devotion, the pulse of a life ordered toward God. Occasionally, the sound of soft chanting drifts faintly through the walls. Not every monk can find rest quickly. Some rise quietly in the night to continue their prayers in private. A flickering candle in a distant corridor reveals a figure bent in devotion, while the others sleep. This devotion, unseen and unrecorded, is part of the monastery's heartbeat. The cloister is not only stone and silence, it is also a mirror of the monk's own inner life. Just as the courtyard is encircled by arches, so too are the monks enclosed by the rule of their vows. And just as the stars shine steadily above, so does the light of faith guide them, even in the darkest hours. When at last the great silence deepens, the cloister becomes almost otherworldly. Moonlight rests across the flagstones like a silver veil, and the dark corners seem filled with mysteries. It is easy to imagine that angels, too, walk these paths, their presence hidden but near. The monastery holds its breath, waiting for dawn. Outside these walls who never know such peace. The rhythm of walking, the steady sound of breath, becomes its own meditation. At the edge of the cloister, the watchman pauses to look out toward the outer walls of the monastery. Beyond lies the countryside, dark and vast. Fields stretch unseen into the distance, broken only by a faint glimmer where a farmhouse keeps its own lantern lit. He feels the stillness of the world, the way even the trees seem to rest beneath the stars. There is danger beyond the monastery's walls, bandits, storms, uncertainty, but for this moment, the quiet of creation feels unbroken. Sometimes, the night watch involves small tasks, checking the storerooms for safety, ensuring the scriptorium's candles are properly snuffed, or confirming that no spark lingers in the refectory's hearth. Each action, though simple, carries meaning. To guard the monastery's well-being is to guard the community's devotion. Even in darkness, order is preserved. When his walk carries him back into the cloister, the watchman pauses by the central garden. The fountain murmurs softly, its trickle of water silver under the stars. He sits on a stone bench for a while, closing his eyes. The fragrance of rosemary and thyme rises on the night air. Here, solitude deepens into reflection. He thinks of the day gone by, the chants, the meals, the laughter of novices in the courtyard. He knows tomorrow will bring the same rhythm, yet each repetition is new, another step on the lifelong pilgrimage of faith. Inside the dormitory, the rest of the monks sleep. Their breathing drifts like a collective prayer, soft and steady. Some turn in their sleep, others rest completely still, their faces lit faintly by the moonlight, slipping through narrow windows. The watchman's presence ensures that this peace remains undisturbed. At times, silence itself becomes overwhelming. The absence of voices can feel heavy, pressing against the ears. But within this hush lies a deeper truth. Silence is not emptiness but fullness. It allows the heart to listen, not just to the sounds of the monastery, but to the whisper of the divine. The watchman understands this. He welcomes the silence, lets it settle into him, and carries it like a hidden blessing. An hour or two passes in this quiet rhythm. The monk walks, prays, observes, and reflects. Eventually, his shift draws to an end. Another brother will rise to take his place, carrying the lantern forward into the night. The watchman bows his head, returns the light to its resting place, and slips back into the dormitory. He lowers himself onto his pallet, the straw rustling softly beneath him, and pulls his cloak around his shoulders. Sleep comes quickly, as though the silence itself embraces him. Through the dark hours, the monastery breathes in unison. The night watch continues, one brother at a time, until the first bell of dawn calls them all together again. In this way, the monastery remains alive even in sleep, its devotion unbroken, its vigil eternal. The monastery's rhythm does not truly sleep. Even in the deepest hours of the night, the bells call the brothers from rest to rise and offer prayer. This is the midnight office, one of the canonical hours that marks time with devotion. It is a practice of discipline, of watchfulness, and of remembering that night belongs as much to God as the day. The sound begins faintly, a single bell tolling through the chill air, echoing across stone walls. In the dormitory, the monks stir from their straw pallets. Cloaks are drawn close, sandals slipped on. The narrow chamber fills with quiet movement, the soft rustle of fabric, the shuffle of feet. Not a word is spoken. The great silence remains, carried forward even into this act of rising. One by one, the brothers step into the corridor. The lanterns flicker faintly, their flames fed just enough to guide the way. Shadows stretch along the walls, and the monks themselves appear like silhouettes moving steadily toward the chapel. It is not haste that moves them, but purpose. Even in weariness, the devotion is constant. The chapel doors open, and the monks file inside. Candles are already lit upon the altar, casting a golden glow across the stone interior. The night outside is black, but within, the chapel seems to hold a warmth all its own. The monks take their places in the choir stalls. Hoods are drawn low, hands folded across laps, eyes resting on the light of the candles. The chanting begins, low and steady. At first it is little more than a hum, a tone rising in the dark. Then words take form, psalms recited in unison, verses repeated with gentle rhythm. The sound fills the chapel, echoes off the vaulted ceiling, and returns like a wave of prayer. Each note is shaped by breath carried upward until the entire chamber seems alive with devotion. The midnight office is not long, but it is profound. It begins with a hymn, continues through psalms and readings, and concludes with silent reflection. Every part of it serves to remind the brothers that their lives are not their own. They are part of a greater offering, an eternal act of praise that never ceases across the hours of the world. Though drowsiness tugs at them, the monks do not waver. The discipline of waking, of setting aside comfort for prayer, strengthens both body and spirit. They know that the rhythm of their devotion is as steady as the cycles of the moon. As one brother chants a reading from Scripture, another leans slightly against the wooden stool, steadying himself against fatigue. Yet even the act of persevering becomes an offering. When the chanting ceases, silence returns. The candles burn steadily, casting their light on stone and wood, on the lined faces of monks who have given decades to this life. In that silence, hearts rest in contemplation. For some, it is a moment of intimacy with the divine. For others, it is simply a quiet space where the weight of the world falls away. A final prayer is offered. The abbot speaks softly, his words a blessing that hovers in the still air. The monks bow their heads, receive the benediction, and then rise. Slowly, they file out of the chapel. The candles remain, glowing softly in the dark, a reminder that prayer lingers even when voices have ceased. The return to the dormitory is as quiet as the arrival. Some monks slip quickly back to sleep. Others, their minds stirred by the psalms, rest with eyes open, listening to the faint sounds of night around them. The midnight office does not disrupt their rest, but deepens it, weaving prayer into the fabric of even their dreams. Beyond the monastery walls, the night continues. The stars wheel overhead, silent and watchful. A breeze stirs the trees in the courtyard, carrying the scent of damp earth and herbs. Inside, the monastery holds its stillness like a treasure. Each monk, whether awake or asleep, remains, folded into the rhythm of devotion. Thus, the monastery breathes through the night, not in idleness, but in prayer. The midnight office ensures that no hour passes untouched by praise, and as the final moments of night drift toward dawn, the monks rest again, knowing they will rise once more to continue the eternal rhythm. The night was cold and hushed, the kind of silence that made every step echo louder than it should. Our spy, after weeks of living in secrecy, carrying false names and relaying coded letters, had been entrusted with what would be his most dangerous mission yet. It was the culmination of months of quiet work, long rides through the countryside, and whispers exchanged in candlelit taverns. This mission would determine whether the army in the north received the reinforcements they so desperately needed. The plan was simple in theory, but perilous in practice. Deliver intelligence across enemy-controlled territory without being discovered. The British patrols had grown tighter, their suspicions sharper. Rumors spread that spies were being hanged in town squares to send a message. Failure was not an option, yet the risks were higher than ever before. The road through the darkness, traveling under a moonless sky, our spy clutched a small satchel that contained far more than paper. Inside were troop counts, supply lists, and a coded map of British artillery placements. To anyone else, it was scribbled nonsense, but to the right eyes, it was a key to survival. He chose paths that wound through forests and fields, avoiding the main roads where redcoat patrols made their rounds. The sounds of the night, an owl, the rustling of leaves, were his companions, yet each sound also carried a threat. A snapping twig could be a soldier waiting in the dark. At one point, he had to stop and kneel in the dirt as the faint glow of lanterns passed along the road only yards away. He could hear the British soldiers talking, their accents sharp and clipped. One laughed about the bounty placed on spies' heads, bragging that he hoped to catch one himself. Our spy did not move, barely breathed, until the lights faded into the distance. Codes and disguises by now, he had mastered the art of vanishing into plain sight. In one town, he posed as a traveling merchant selling thread and ribbon. In another, he disguised himself as a simple farmer hauling grain. His disguises were ordinary, and that was precisely why they worked. No one looked twice at someone who seemed unremarkable. The real genius lay in how he hid the messages. Some were written in invisible ink, revealed only by holding the paper near a flame. Others were tucked inside the seams of his coat or the hollow of a quill pen. One message was concealed in the buttons of his waistcoat. Even if searched, he often carried a decoy letter, harmless details about crops and trade, to throw off suspicion. Every encounter tested his nerve. When a British officer once stopped him on the road and asked where he was headed, he smiled, tipped his hat, and spun a tale about visiting his cousin to help mend a broken barn roof. The officer, satisfied, waved him on. But our spy knew that had his voice trembled or his eyes darted, the outcome would have been very different. A narrow escape. The climax of his mission came when he was forced to pass through a village occupied by redcoats. He timed his arrival carefully, entering at dawn when the streets were just beginning to stir. He carried a basket of apples, purchased from a farm the night before, to support his disguise as a fruit seller. But luck is a fickle friend. Just as he was nearing the far side of town, a soldier demanded to see what was in his satchel. The spy's heart pounded, but he kept his face calm. Slowly, he opened the flap, revealing the decoy papers he had prepared. The soldiers scanned them, muttered about boring farm business, and tossed them back. The spy offered him an apple with a smile, which the soldier took before waving him along. Once safely beyond the village, he allowed himself one deep breath, steadying his hands. The real intelligence was still secure, hidden in a secret fold of the satchel. Mission accomplished. At last, after days of tension and sleepless travel, he reached the Patriot encampment. The commander, a stern man with sharp eyes, unrolled the coded map and studied it in silence. Then, with a nod, he declared that the information was accurate and timely. Thanks to the spy's efforts, reinforcements could be diverted and a surprise British maneuver would be thwarted. For the spy, there was no applause, no celebration. His work was invisible by design. He would slip away again, his name never recorded, his deeds unspoken. In time, battles would be won, and the revolution would march forward, shaped in part by men and women like him, who risked everything in shadows. That night, as he lay hidden in a barn, the distant sound of drums carried through the air. He knew the war was far from over. Tomorrow would bring new dangers, new messages to carry, and new disguises to wear. But for now, he allowed himself a rare moment of quiet satisfaction. He had survived another mission. He had served his cause, and though history might never speak his name, the revolution would. Closing reflection, spies like him were the invisible threads weaving the fabric of the American Revolution. Their courage did not shine on the battlefield, but flickered in the silent moments, slipping past patrols, passing coded letters, keeping secrets even under threat of death. Without them, armies might have marched blind, ambushes would have succeeded, and strategies might have failed. They were, in truth, the shadow soldiers of independence. And so, as this chapter of his life closes, we remember that freedom was not won by muskets and cannons alone, but by whispers, ink, and the bravery of those who walked a thin line between life and death in the world of Revolutionary War espionage.